The year is 2018. Dr. Elias Vance, a brilliant but disgraced theoretical physicist, now found himself pursuing his esoteric research far from the critical eye of academia. His laboratory was a converted, damp warehouse on the docks of Bergen, Norway, cluttered with half-finished prototypes and chalk-covered blackboards filled with frantic equations concerning multidimensional resonance. Elias believed that reality was not singular, but composed of countless parallel frequencies, and he sought a device capable of tuning into them. Elias's personal life was haunted by a single, catastrophic event, the disappearance of his fiancée, Dr. Lena Solberg, during a deep-sea research dive 3 years prior. The official report cited equipment failure, but Elias, driven by guilt and a physicist's certainty, believed she was not dead, but merely misplaced, shifted onto a nearby dimensional frequency by the unstable energies of the deep ocean. His breakthrough came accidentally. A local fishing trawler, dragging nets far off the coast near an unmapped thermal vent, pulled up an artifact that defied immediate classification. It looked like a complicated brass cage full of spinning gears and crystalline lenses, a device that resembled a hybrid between the Antikythera mechanism and an early 20th century calculator. It was dubbed the Hjerteslag, heartbeat, by the fishermen due to the faint, steady tick-tock sound it emitted, despite being recovered from crushing depths. Elias purchased the object instantly. It was impossibly old, impossibly complex, and, most importantly, impossibly active. He spent months meticulously cleaning and analyzing the Hjerteslag. He discovered that the device was not a clock or a calculator, but a kind of dimensional tuning fork. The gears weren't tracking time, they were charting dimensional drift. Etched into the brass casing was a single, cryptic inscription in a language he couldn't identify, but which his intuition translated as, "The shortest distance between 2 points is rarely a straight line." His analysis culminated in a terrifying realization: the device was not only capable of detecting dimensional shifts, but it had already locked onto a specific, extremely high-energy resonance, a frequency that was dangerously unstable and entirely alien to our dimension. This frequency perfectly matched the coordinates of Lena's last recorded location. Elias theorized that the Hjerteslag was a key, and by manually adjusting its crystalline lenses to align with the unstable frequency, he could open a temporary Babel Gate, a brief, dimensional rift. His intent was simple: locate Lena, confirm her survival, and figure out how to retrieve her. On a stormy October night, the magnetic energy from the turbulent North Sea providing a natural power source, Elias activated the Hjerteslag. He placed the device on a heavy steel table, stabilizing it with powerful electromagnets. He began carefully rotating the brass gears, the faint tick-tock growing louder and more frantic. As the gears clicked into their final, terrifying position, the crystalline lenses began to glow with a sickly, pulsating purple light. The air above the Hjerteslag shimmered violently. A vortex, not of wind, but of pure, visual static, tore open above the device. It was a perfect circle of multicolored chaos, a window into another, impossibly different reality. The air smelled of ozone and something metallic, like burnt copper. Elias rushed to the edge of the rift, peering into the swirling colors. The other side was not a watery abyss, but a blindingly bright landscape dominated by towers of glowing crystal and structures made of geometrically impossible alloys. It was a world of pure, contained energy. He saw a figure. A woman, dressed in strange, flowing robes of a vibrant blue color, standing on a crystalline walkway. She was turning toward the rift. Her face was familiar, yet utterly alien. Her features were Lena's, but her eyes held a detached, serene wisdom, and her skin bore faint, luminous blue markings. She was looking right at him. Before Elias could speak, the unstable energy of the rift slammed against his dimension. The static vortex lurched and began to collapse rapidly. A voice, Lena's voice, but layered with metallic, resonant echoes, entered his mind, not through the air, but through the overwhelming magnetic field. "Elias! Do not close the gate. You have less than 3 hours. I am holding the resonance, but the Axiom Core is failing. You must come through. The device is the key, but the seal is with the first traveler, our child." Before Elias could process the mention of a child he never knew, the vortex snapped shut with an audible, violent crack. The Hjerteslag stopped ticking, the purple light fading to a dull gray. Elias was left alone in the cold warehouse, the air thick with ozone, haunted by the image of a missing fiancé, a warning of a failing core, and the terrifying mention of a child lost between dimensions. He had found Lena, but he had less than 3 hours to follow her into a collapsing parallel reality. The sudden silence in the warehouse was deafening after the violent snap of the dimensional collapse. Elias staggered back, his heart pounding not just from the shock, but from the word that echoed in his mind, child. 3 years ago, Lena had vanished, and now, a resonant echo of her soul was warning him about a son or daughter he had never known, held captive in a collapsing parallel dimension. He grabbed the Hjerteslag device. It was cold and inert, the pulsing purple light completely extinguished. The dimensional tuning fork was not broken, merely depleted. The magnetic fields of the North Sea storm still raged outside, providing the massive power source the device needed. Elias, driven by a primal need to rescue his family, worked with frantic, brutal efficiency. He bypassed the intricate wiring, physically connecting the Hjerteslag's brass casing directly to his main generator and a massive ground wire leading to the stormy ocean. He needed to overload the system, forcing a raw, unstable activation. As the raw current hit the Hjerteslag, the gears began to grind and whine, turning far too quickly. The crystalline lenses didn't glow purple this time, they flared with a dangerous, unstable orange light. The Babel Gate tore open again, not as a perfect circle, but as a jagged, unstable rip in the air. The smell of ozone was overpowering, and the vortex pulsed wildly, threatening to dissipate at any moment. Elias had no time for preparation. He grabbed a heavy-duty, customized climbing harness and clipped a small, reinforced backpack containing emergency gear and his own complex magnetic stabilizer, a prototype designed to counteract dimensional friction, to his chest. He knew his entry would be a one-way trip, at least initially. With a deep breath and a silent promise to Lena, Elias hurled himself into the chaotic, multicolored void of the Babel Gate. The transition was agonizing. He felt every molecule of his body being pulled, stretched, and violently reassembled. It was like falling through 1,000 different static channels at once. He slammed onto a surface that felt solid but unnervingly pliable, bouncing slightly. He was in a different world. The atmosphere was blindingly bright. He looked up at towers of what appeared to be pure, glowing crystal, soaring into a sky that was a permanent, pale silver. The air was thin, cold, and hummed with a constant, low-frequency vibration. He was on a wide, crystalline walkway far above the ground, the landscape below a blur of geometric structures and contained energy flows. This was Axiom, the dimension Lena had mentioned. He looked back. The portal he had used was gone. He was stranded, alone. He quickly located Lena. She was standing barely 50 feet away, beside a massive, intricate cylindrical structure, the Axiom Core she had warned him about. Lena was different. Her flowing blue robes were marked with faint, luminous blue circuitry patterns that seemed to pulse beneath her skin. Her eyes, though retaining their familiar warmth, were focused and detached. And beside her stood the child. A boy, no older than 3 or 4, dressed in similar blue robes. He was holding a small, smooth, white stone that pulsed in sync with Lena's markings. The child was looking at Elias with wide, curious eyes. "Elias. You made it." Lena's voice, though still resonant, was now clearly audible. She rushed toward him, her movement quick but controlled, a strange new grace about her. Elias embraced her, the relief overwhelming the terror. "Lena, my God, you're alive." "And he, who is he?" Lena gently pulled back, placing her hand protectively on the boy's shoulder. "This is Kai. He is the reason I survived, the reason I am here. When my dive pod breached the dimensional layer, the unstable energy merged with me, and he was conceived by the dimensional force itself. He is a child of both dimensions, Elias. He is the seal." She pointed to the crystalline core, which was visibly cracking, emitting flashes of dangerous, concentrated orange energy. 3 years ago, the Axiom Core began to fail. This world, built on pure dimensional energy, is collapsing. When I arrived, the core's energy fused with me, creating a counter-resonance, Kai. He is the living lock, the human conduit that temporarily binds this reality together, but his energy is weakening. What is the core? Elias demanded, the physicist in him taking over. It's an ancient machine, Elias, Lena explained, leading him quickly toward the core. The Axiom Core is a dimensional stabilizer, a giant energy accumulator created by a lost civilization to harvest and contain dimensional drift. Its collapse is what created the deep-sea anomaly that pulled me in. When it fully fails, this dimension will snap back to the energy flow of our reality, obliterating everything here, including us and Kai. The Hjerteslag, Elias realized, looking at the inert brass device on his harness. It's a stabilizer, isn't it? A small version of the core. Exactly, Lena confirmed. But it only works if we can transfer the core's stabilized energy into it, using Kai as the conduit. The Hjerteslag must become the new, mobile Axiom Core. She looked at her son, his small hand still clutching the pulsing white stone. Kai's life force is the only thing currently holding the main core's remaining energy. If we disconnect him to charge the Hjerteslag, the Axiom Core will immediately fail and detonate. Elias looked from the magnificent, cracking core to his son, the literal child of a dimensional storm. The scientist had a solution, but the father faced an impossible choice. Saving the world meant potentially dooming their son, the very seal that held it together. The dilemma was a scientist's nightmare and a parent's ultimate terror. Elias stood at the precipice of an ethical void: sacrifice his son's connection to the dying Axiom Core to power the mobile stabilizer, or watch all three of them be annihilated when the dimension collapsed. We have to stabilize the core before disconnecting him, Elias stated, his voice tight with controlled desperation. He refused the choice of sacrifice. The magnetic stabilizer I brought, my prototype. It was designed to absorb and temporarily neutralize high-frequency dimensional friction. If we can apply it directly to the core's fracture points, it might buy us the seconds we need. Lena, her face etched with the weary wisdom of the axiom dimension, nodded grimly. The core's failing energy is violently repulsive. Your stabilizer is small, you would have to physically place it on the fracture points. It would mean exposing yourself to a blast of raw, multidimensional energy. We're already breathing multidimensional air, Elias countered, pulling the specialized magnetic stabilizer from his pack. It was a bulky, metallic device covered in superconducting coils. Kai needs his energy to survive the transition back. We do this my way. The massive Axiom Core was a cylindrical structure of immense, spiraling crystal. The fracture points Lena had warned of were vast, spiderweb-like cracks emitting dangerous, bright orange energy flares. The low, constant hum of the dimension was now punctuated by violent, rhythmic crack sounds as the crystalline surface yielded to the internal pressure. The resonance points are clustered near the base, Lena directed, her voice resonant in the humming atmosphere. I'll use my resonance to dampen the ambient field. You'll have a window of about 10 seconds for each of the 3 major points. As Lena approached the core, her blue robes flared, and the faint, luminous markings on her skin began to glow intensely. She emitted a low, powerful sonic dampening field that smoothed the violent crackling. Elias began his terrifying task. He rushed to the first fracture point, the heat and energy blast hitting him like a physical blow. He wrestled the stabilizer prototype into the crack, the device immediately locking on and glowing fiercely as it absorbed the raw dimensional energy. Crack! He barely made it to the second point before the core shuddered violently, throwing him off balance. Lena's face twisted with effort, the strain of dampening the field was immense. He saw little Kai, still clutching the white stone, wince in pain as his mother pushed her internal energy. Almost done, Elias. Hurry! Lena urged, her voice strained. Elias sprinted to the final fracture point, ignoring the metallic taste of ozone and blood in his mouth. He slammed the last stabilizer into place. A moment of profound silence followed. The violent cracking stopped. The orange flare subsided, replaced by a slow, sickly yellow light. "It's stable," Elias gasped, collapsing onto the crystalline floor. It held. Lena rushed to him, but her relief was short-lived. "It's temporary, Elias. Your stabilizers only absorb the energy, they don't neutralize it. They will detonate in less than 15 minutes when they reach saturation. We have to charge the Hjerteslag now." The time had come for the critical step, transferring the stable energy from the main Axiom Core into the mobile Hjerteslag, using Kai as the indispensable conduit, the living seal. Lena led Elias to a pedestal near the core. On it was a circular indentation, perfectly sized for the Hjerteslag. "Kai needs to place the seal stone into this indentation," Lena explained, gently taking the boy's hand. "The stone is an extension of his own dimensional energy. When he connects it, the core will channel the stabilized power into the pedestal, charging the Hjerteslag." Elias quickly placed the brass Hjerteslag into the pedestal. The device remained inert, waiting for the massive power surge. Kai, his eyes wide and serious, looked up at his father, then placed the small white seal stone into the indentation. The effect was instantaneous and overwhelming. A pillar of pure, white-hot energy shot up from the pedestal, striking Kai directly. The boy did not cry out, but his tiny body convulsed under the sheer force. The faint blue markings on Lena's skin began to drain into the core's pedestal, feeding the circuit. The energy transferred rapidly into the Hjerteslag. The brass gears whirred into a controlled frenzy, and the crystalline lenses flared back to life, this time with a stable, brilliant gold light. The Hjerteslag was charged, it was now the mobile Axiom Core. But the main Axiom Core, deprived of Kai's living resonance, let out a massive, terrifying shudder. The yellow light of the temporary stability was instantly replaced by an accelerating, terrifying dark red glow. "The core is collapsing immediately," Lena cried out, collapsing from the sudden energy drain. "We've lost our window. The core is going critical." Elias looked at his watch, only 3 minutes had passed. He looked at the massive cylindrical structure, which was now melting and buckling under the strain. The Axiom dimension, saved momentarily, was now facing final destruction. Their only hope was to escape, immediately. The Axiom Core was now a death sentence. The massive crystalline structure was melting, the dark red glow intensifying into a pulsing, malevolent aura. The atmosphere was vibrating so violently that the crystalline walkway was beginning to fracture, sending sharp shards spiraling into the thin air. Lena and Elias, exhausted and terrified, rushed to retrieve their son, Kai, who was slumped against the now inert pedestal, the white seal stone still in his grasp. "We need the Hjerteslag," Elias shouted over the deafening whine of the collapsing core. He grabbed the brass device. Its golden glow was brilliant, radiating the stable energy they needed for the return trip, but it needed a catalyst and a focus point to open the Babel Gate again. "The resonance point is the first fracture," Lena screamed, pointing toward the area where Elias had placed his temporary stabilizers. "The stabilizers are about to detonate. We can use that explosion as the catalyst to open the rift." Elias understood. They needed the synchronized collapse of the small stabilizers to create a localized, concentrated tear in the dimensional fabric, a perfect exit point. But that exit point was near the core, mere seconds before its full annihilation. Lena quickly worked the controls on Elias's magnetic stabilizer prototype, rigging it to activate the Hjerteslag at the exact moment of the first stabilizer's explosion. They ran toward the fracture points, Elias carrying Kai and Lena bracing herself against the terrifying shutters of the collapsing dimension. They reached the cluster of temporary stabilizers. They were vibrating uncontrollably, emitting streams of highly concentrated, volatile energy. The first stabilizer was already glowing white-hot, mere seconds from detonation. "Get ready!" Elias yelled, placing Kai gently on the ground, shielding him with his body. He placed the Hjerteslag device directly onto the crystalline walkway near the detonating stabilizer. The golden light of the Hjerteslag was fighting the dark red power of the core's collapse. "Lena, we need a focus. Something to anchor the gate to our reality." Lena looked at the inert white seal stone clutched in Kai's hand. The stone. It is the key to our dimension. The pure resonance of our son's home reality. Lena reached for the seal stone, but before she could retrieve it, the first temporary stabilizer exploded. The blast was not sound, but pure, terrifying force. The localized dimensional fabric tore open instantly. The Babel Gate was ripped open, shimmering violently, directly above the Hjerteslag. The vortex was a chaotic, terrifying maelstrom, but Elias saw it, the familiar darkness of the North Sea, the cold, damp air of his warehouse. Their world was visible. But the force of the blast had done more than open the gate, it had destabilized the Hjerteslag. The golden light flickered, the gears stuttered. The Hjerteslag is failing. It can't maintain the gate for all three of us. Lena cried out, looking at the rapidly closing rift. It was only built for a single transfer, Elias. I can't hold the resonance from this far. Elias looked at Lena, then at Kai, whose small body was trembling violently from the surrounding chaos. He was the only one who could operate the controls, the only one who truly understood the physics of the Hjerteslag. I need a conduit, Lena, Elias said, his voice flat with terrible resolve. I need one of us to become the final, stable focus, to manually merge with the Hjerteslag's resonance to hold the gate long enough for you and Kai to pass through. Lena looked at the collapsing Axiom Core, now less than 20 feet away, and then at her son. Her features, which had carried the detached wisdom of Axiom, softened into the familiar love of his Lena. I am already a hybrid, Elias, she whispered, tears forming in her luminous blue eyes. I have the resonance. I am the mother of the seal. My sacrifice is the only one that guarantees Kai's survival. Before Elias could protest, she lunged toward the Hjerteslag. She placed her hands on the rapidly spinning gears and merged her essence with the device's gold light. Lena's body began to shimmer, her blue robes flaring. The gold light of the Hjerteslag instantly stabilized, holding the chaotic Babel Gate wide open. Her familiar voice, now amplified and crystalline, entered his mind one last time. Go, Elias. Take our son. The heartbeat is stable, but my essence is the fuel. Do not look back. I will hold the line until your reality is secure. Elias, the man of science, was forced into the most painful, most human act of his life. He swept up Kai and, gripping the still shimmering, golden-fused Hjerteslag, he hurled himself and his son through the stabilized dimensional rift, leaving Lena behind as the living core of the unstable gate. Elias and Kai slammed onto the cold, concrete floor of the Bergen warehouse. The air was thick with the scent of salt and ozone, but it was familiar, safe air. The Babel Gate snapped shut behind them with a final, echoing crack, instantly obliterating the sight and sound of the Axiom Dimension's destruction. Elias lay there for a long time, the weight of his sacrifice crushing him. He had returned with his son and the stabilizing device, but he had left Lena behind, transformed into the fuel for their escape. He lifted his head. The warehouse was still damp and cluttered, but intact. The massive generator hummed normally. He looked at his son. Kai was trembling but unharmed, his small hands still clutching the smooth, white seal stone. He was home. Elias spent the next few weeks trying to process the impossible. The Hjerteslag, the brass clockwork mechanism, was now completely inert, the gold light gone. It was just a cold artifact, its purpose fulfilled. He locked it away in a shielded, lead-lined vault, too dangerous and too painful to study further. Kai was the anomaly. The 3-year-old child of a dimensional storm. His presence in this reality caused minor, localized dimensional friction, lights flickered when he was upset, and occasionally, objects would subtly shift position near him. Elias understood, Kai was the living seal, his unique bidimensional energy now acting as a subtle, constant stabilizer for our local reality, preventing further catastrophic dimensional bleed. Elias left the docks and returned to academic obscurity, finding quiet work tutoring advanced physics students. He raised Kai in isolation, teaching him about the reality's delicate balance and the silent cost of his existence. He taught Kai how to control his energetic friction, often using simple scientific principles as metaphors for emotional control. They lived a quiet, ordinary life, made extraordinary by their shared, unspeakable secret. Elias never told Kai the full story of his mother, only that she was a brilliant physicist who sacrificed everything to save them. Every year, on the anniversary of the collapse, a date Elias had meticulously recorded, he would take Kai to the coast near the coordinates of Lena's last dive. On the third anniversary, a calm, windless day, Elias took the inert Hjerteslag out of the vault. He and 7-year-old Kai stood on the rocks overlooking the cold North Sea. Kai, a quiet and intensely focused child, placed the white seal stone into the device's main cavity. The stone, once an extension of the Axiom Core, fit perfectly. As the boy released his energy, the Hjerteslag did not glow with unstable purple or stabilizing gold. Instead, its crystalline lenses began to shimmer with a faint, steady luminous blue light, the color of Lena's robes and the markings on her skin in Axiom. The old clockwork began to tick, not frantically, but with a slow, powerful, steady rhythm. The heartbeat returned. Elias realized that Lena was not destroyed, she had become the true, permanent, and stable core of the Hjerteslag. She was maintaining a link, a slow, gentle resonance across the dimensions, stabilizing both realities through the device. From that day forward, the Hjerteslag became their sacred artifact. It would tick gently on Kai's bedside table, a constant reminder of his mother's presence and sacrifice. When Kai was frightened or unstable, he would place his hand on the brass casing. He wouldn't hear Lena's voice, but he would feel a surge of profound calm, a mother's stable, eternal love resonating across the dimensional gap. Elias Vance, the disgraced physicist, found redemption not in a theory, but in a father's love, the silent hum of a salvaged clockwork, and the gentle, luminous heartbeat that promised that no one is truly lost, only shifted.